So, one of the reasons people are interested in joining early stage startups is that if you join the right startup and that startup grows and scales and then experiences an exit, it could turn you into a very wealthy early employee. And there's famous examples of this, folks like Chamath Palihapitiya, who is part of the All In podcast that I listen to. He was an early employee in the product management side for Facebook. And what happens with these companies is that if you're an early employee, a lot of the times these startups are not paying you what we would call market rates for salary and compensation. That's just because they have to be frugal with their money. But what they do in many instances is then issue their key employees stock along the way. And if the company is successful, if it grows, that stock can become worth far more than the compensation that you're getting. And that stock is given to them via what's called an RSU, or a restricted stock unit. Now, it's not just startups that give out RSUs, there are large corporations that give out RSUs as well. Publicly traded companies give out RSUs. Typically, though, in existing larger companies, that happens only when you reach a certain level of position. So, for example, you might be required to be a director or higher. When you go to work for a startup, if you're a key employee or an early employee, then most likely you could earn some RSUs along the way. So it's just stock that's issued by the company to key early employees. Now, an RSU is not an option. An option is just the what it sounds like. It's the option to buy stock in the company. An RSU is more like a grant. You're granted these shares, and then you hold them for a certain period of time. So one of the pros of an RSU is what I've been talking about. If you join a company early enough and you're granted RSUs, this can happen every year through a cycle. You could be granted RSUs as compensation along the way. If you have collected RSUs along the way, let's say you're granted 1,000 RSUs in a company, and that company's goes public and then sells for $20 a share, you've now, have $20,000 that you didn't count on as part of compensation. It could be even better if you earn hundreds of thousands of RSUs along the way. That same company IPOs for, $20 per share, then you have $2 million. You've probably heard stories of this happening at other companies, the ones that we all know about. So the Microsofts of the world, there's articles out there about the number of millionaires that Microsoft minted or created when they went public. And these were early or key employees that had RSUs in the company. It IPO'd, and next thing you know, they're millionaires. And so that's really the best pro there is the ability to build wealth with RSUs. And you can see this with folks in the industry. I have seen plenty of folks who will work at just about every top startup there is, where they might join Airbnb for a while, and then they might join another and join another. And then they have RSUs across multiple startups. And if any or one of those or all of them hit, they're now suddenly multimillionaires. And the next thing you know, they're creating their own venture capital agencies or funds, and then they're investing back in startups as well. Now, the cons of an RSU is that you're granted them, but you can't always cash them out right away. Typically, what happens is you have what's called a vesting period, which means you have to hold those units for a set period of time. So it could be something as long as having to hold them until the company IPOs. Well, what happens if you're holding RSUs in a startup and they never make it to an IPO? In that instance, then you have RSUs that are worth $0. There could be other restrictions that are put on your RSUs. And so, what you're going to want to do if you go and you are considering joining a startup is just ask lots of questions and ask for documentation around alternative compensation, such as RSUs. Check out that language. See if there are particular restrictions on who you can sell to. So maybe you can only sell to, the public markets. Maybe you can't sell privately, those types of things. See if there's certain vesting periods that you have to follow. But RSUs are a great way to build some wealth. Again, I wouldn't count on them as compensation. There are plenty of instances of startup failing and people having RSUs and they're worth nothing. So make sure you think that through, but it can be a great way to build wealth if you do a good job of picking the right startups or companies to work with. You never know, you could be minted a millionaire yourself. Till next time, have a great day.